Hi, everyone. The only thing worse starting right before lunch is starting right before happy hour, so I will try to make this as efficient as possible. Let me introduce myself. My name is Danny Klein. I work at Verizon doing new business incubation and innovation. I've been working on augmented reality for the past year and a half or so, leading the program there, and wanted to just walk you through how we think about the world in terms of augmented reality for industrials. Let me just set the stage a little bit. I'm not going to spend too much time here because I think we've all seen many iterations of this chart over the past couple of days. But essentially, augmented reality for industrials is big. If you look at the growth rate over the next 4 or 5 years, it's over 200%. And I think the takeaway here is not necessarily the number. We could all argue about the numbers, but is really 21% in 2020 of the augmented reality market will be dedicated towards the industrial supply chain. And that's a big number. And why do we really want to focus on industrials first? Verizon as a company is interested both on the consumer side and the industrial side. However, if you look at some of the challenges that we talked about over the past couple of days at this conference, there are several technology challenges that we believe lend the industrial side to be a little bit more ready, if you will, than the consumer side. And that's really talking about things like mobility and the wearability of these head-mounted devices or these smart glasses, and computer vision. And a lot of the components that come together to really provide a holistic experience for the end user, that's still a few years away. However, companies don't mind that much. They don't mind having a 6-ounce pair of glasses that's tethered to a battery pack that's around someone's waist if it's going to save them some money. And so if you look at the list of logos over there, there's a whole host of companies today that are actually using augmented reality specifically around different use cases in industry. And these aren't necessarily companies that are just experimenting with augmented reality. They're actually deploying it. BMW is using it on their factory lines across hundreds of workers in Germany. DHL is using this for warehouse picking scenarios. They're actually realizing 20 to 25% productivity gains by doing so. So there's some real compelling reasons and use cases within the industrial supply chain, and that's what we want to talk about today. So enough of the formal presentation, and let me introduce my two panelists. This is John Simmons, who works at the Electric Power Research Institute, and I'll let him introduce himself in just a second. And Paul Brandt, who's a colleague of mine at Verizon, who leads the Smart Cities Initiative. So John, you want to give a quick introduction?
Sure. As stated, my name is John Simmons. I'm a technical executive at EPRI, which is kind of like being a made man in the mafia. I've been interested in augmented reality since 1971, 1972 when I read about it in Popular Science, and I've just been waiting to get into it ever since. EPRI is in the job of providing safe, reliable, affordable, environmentally sustainable power. We're a 501c3 for the public good corporation, so all of our research is geared to benefit the public, and we do about $420 million worth of research each year. Most of that is funded by the electric utility industry worldwide. So if you come up to me and you say, does EPRI research? The answer is yes. We research absolutely everything having to do with electric energy, from concrete aging to eel survivability in hydroelectric dams, to the impact of fly ash on the human body, to crazy things like augmented reality. So Andy Lowry was being kind to me earlier. He said I operate a big division of EPRI. Well, I don't. I operate a tiny little piece of EPRI, a couple of $1 million that we're working on out of a $420 million budget. goes to augmented reality, and I'm trying to coordinate all of the augmented reality projects, and now we're up to about 20, 25 projects all across the Institute. My background is by training. I have a BS and a PhD in material science, and through a lot of weird, unpredictable events, I ended up in the electric utility industry. So that's my background. Next,
Sure.
Paul.
Paul Brand, work for Verizon. I come at this with a little bit different angle. I'm actually an IoT engineer. So I'm working on specifically in smart cities. So throughout this whole conference, I've heard IoT always thrown out. Well, I'm the guy that's actually working on the devices and bringing that information back into what we have an IoT architecture within Verizon. And so one of the areas we're working primarily with is cities, and my area is more on computer vision, of how can we take every little camera, every little thing that takes images and gain information from it. This is from pedestrians walking across crosswalks to monitoring groups of people to looking at anomaly detection, watching basically pixels, and when they basically move in an unorganized or unknown pattern to be able to send alerts. So I look at augmented reality from not necessarily from the overlay and everything else, more from the data that can be provided to it. And that's where the IoT and the smart cities and what we're doing in that space, sort of we'll talk a little bit about the use cases, but that's sort of where I come from. I've been 18 years with Verizon. I've always worked on the newest technology. I actually managed a custom engineering group. So anything that was new and great and our customers wanted that fell outside of our product sets, that's what my team got involved in, and that's what we designed to. So I've designed across probably every industry out there, and have been involved in, from TDM circuits all the way up to now augmented reality, looking at machine learning, artificial intelligence.
So let's dig a little bit deeper then on these use cases you mentioned. There's a lot of different ways that one can think about using augmented reality in different verticals and different industries. So Paul, help us understand a little bit more based on customer feedback and speaking to these cities, speaking to these municipalities, these governments, what are they interested in, and how do they think that they could benefit from using augmented reality to interpret some of this data?
Yeah, and it's a great question because, and it really depends who you're talking to at the city. If you're talking to the police department doing public safety, or you're talking to the traffic control, the traffic managers, they're all going to come at it in a different way. But the key things that we've started to see is, the biggest one is sort of citizen services. And this is bringing in, so as we bring in all these IoT devices, how do we use that information to actually improve the quality of life of the citizens? And how do we use that information to actually provide safety to them? So actually working in an intersection, doing a huge IoT project just down the street here, we have put, probably about 60, 70 sensors in an intersection. And we're pulling information. What we're learning is, the amount of data that we're pulling in is just massive. How do we take that data in? But what we're doing with it is we'll be able to, basically tell pedestrians, when a vehicle coming at speed is coming down the street while they're on the crosswalk. Right? We're looking at, how the interaction between pedestrians and vehicles work together, and then be able to ingest that information in real time and then provide that back to both the driver and the pedestrian at the time. Bicyclists in Boston are a big problem, in the fact that they go all over the place. And so we're monitoring that, and we're actually looking to see how we can feed that information back to bicyclists when there may be alternate paths that would be safer for them. So using this information of smart cities, just engaging the citizen and sort of sharing that information between the two is one area where the cities are definitely very interested in. Another area is really about city maintenance, and we've heard a lot while in this conference about productivity and definitely fits into the industrial, but when we worked in the intersection, if we had the capability to look at underground utilities without having to go in a manhole, would have been huge. We had to hire police escorts. We had to block streets. We had to stop traffic, basically. And that was all just to see if we were in the right manhole in the first place. and then to be able to go in and actually understand what's in that manhole, right? So, we see the cities definitely see a capability with the maintenance, and the mobile workforce to be able to build those efficiencies and build those productivities that, again, helps the citizens from a quality of life aspect, but also reduces a lot of the operational costs that's required. And then one of the things we did, we actually had a sort of get together with some FBI agents, some police chiefs, and we just talked about what are their issues with their environments today. And what we learned out of that was huge. And we're also talking a lot with venues, so stadiums and arenas and stuff, and they sort of fall in the same thing as this capability of that situational awareness of an officer that comes on site. But the key is, and it was said before, and this is where more of the artificial intelligence comes in, you have to provide relevant data, right? You can't flood an officer because he'll take it off and do it the old way, You also have to make sure it's hands-free. He has to have his hands, to move forward. One of the things we've also talked to them about is, a city like this or, London or any other city, the number of surveillance cameras that are being put out, huge. You have these massive fusion centers where you're pulling all this video in. The capability, we all think of augmented reality with mobile devices and walking around and seeing stuff, but just taking that live video feed from a fusion center and being able to overlay relevant information onto that is huge. If a police officer comes on site, we worked with a police department in California, and their biggest thing is they wanted camera and they wanted to know what police officers were there to make sure that they can know and be notified and be communicating directly with them. We've talked with venues and stadiums, the ability to take their camera systems and be able to overlay where their security personnel are, right? Along with vending stuff and asset management and all that stuff. But when there's an issue within the stands, to be able to actually notify that Officer Smith or Security Guard Joe is 2 sections away and he's the closest one to him. So these are places where IoT information, so that security guard's wearing some sort of device that's relaying his information and being able to propagate that real time to a security officer that can be mobile also. It doesn't have to be in a fusion center. You can have a guy sitting with a mobile tablet doing this same thing. So, as we look and talk more and more with the cities, you'll hear that it's Wild Wild West. There's millions of opportunities out there, but it's really how do we take that IoT data? How do we take that information and really provide it in a very contextual way and in a way that an end user is gonna be wanting to use it? Because, getting to the work and the maintenance, if you don't provide something that's productive, they're gonna throw it away. So the running joke was 6 months ago, I was actually on a telephone pole. I was working a strike duty for Verizon, and I laughed because I was 25 feet up on a ladder, and how many times I had to pull my tablet out to look at where my binding post, put it back, pull my tools out, work on stuff. Oh, wait a minute, what color were my wires? Do that. Oh my gosh, I just dropped my tools. And then I had to go back down the ladder and then go right back up and worry about all the safety concerns about how to pull ladders off trucks and everything. And I did that on 3 days of training. Right? So the capability to have an augmented reality where I'm up there and I can say, okay, I open the terminal and it says and shows me where the binding posts are. If I need to find open pairs, another set of wires, it just tells me, look at these pairs, right? And the key is that, we actually had a gentleman break ribs and puncture a lung. Because he fell off the ladder he's walking down because he was going down too fast. So a simple thing of safety, saying, as you're coming down the ladder, saying, slow down, or keep 3 points of contact on the ladder. Just reminders of that safety is really, a critical aspect of, what we're looking to provide our customers.
Yeah. So John, you're also in a fortunate position as part of EPRI that you are in constant dialogue with all the utility companies. Mm-hmm. Based on those conversations, what do what's your feeling in terms of feedback, in terms of use cases that some of these utility companies are thinking about?
Well, one of the downsides of going later or last in one of these conferences is that you've heard your speech in one of the previous ones. I mean, really, if you take soldier, sailor, Marine, airman, or policemen and firemen, you take those jobs out and you put in linemen, exact same things. It's situational awareness. It's knowing what's dangerous and what's not dangerous. It's knowing where your fellow workers are in relationship to you. It's all really the same thing. In our industry, probably the overwhelming #1 use case for augmented reality is aging workforce. You hear all these crazy statistics. 40% of the workforce is going to be retired in 5 years or whatever the statistics are. But the point is that we're losing a lot of really valuable older workers and bringing in workers that are far less experienced. And that presents not only operational issues, but safety issues. We're also dabbling in artificial intelligence to help fill the gap. A lot, basically everything Paul said, I could echo too. Our folks go up on polls and deal with it. I do want to correct something. Earlier, one of our colleagues said that the most complicated machine ever made was a nuclear aircraft carrier. No, the most complicated machine ever made is the power grid. Okay, if you think about it, the electric utility industry is the only industry that has to manufacture its product at the exact same time it's consumed. In other words, if you put these enormous spotlights that are in my eyes right now, you turn those things on, the utility doesn't go to the warehouse, get some electrons, and throw them in the hopper. They have to manufacture that electricity real time. And that sets up that gives you a whole new definition of the phrase real-time data. We deal in data that its time constant is 10 to the minus 6, all the way up to 10 to the plus 9, 15 orders of magnitude. And all of that data is related to each other and affects each other, and it needs to be consumed and processed and displayed in some way that you can take action on it. And that's where augmented reality comes in. The folks out in the field, it was easy before we had all the smart equipment. We just made everything 2 or 3 times as big, and we ran it until it caught fire. Well, we can't do that anymore. So, the data systems, the data processing, the intelligence behind it all need to be rethought, re-engineered, and one of the most important things is the visualization of the folks in the field. Somebody said it earlier, it needs to be enabling rather than disabling. If you think about it, you've been watching augmented reality for over a decade when you watch professional football. You see the line of scrimmage marker, you see the first down marker, and you know what? It doesn't cover up anything on the field. You could still see all of the action. And that is the prime example of the information augmenting your experience rather than detracting from you. So we need to apply the same principles out in the field. And as the gentleman that flew the airplane said, you can't have all of this stuff in your way. It's got to tell you the right information at the right time and then go the heck away when you don't need it anymore. But the information also needs to be correct. And all of that is involved in the aging workforce. Guys that used to go out and basically just know what to do, now need to be told what to do. They just knew what equipment to use, what size wire, what type wire. Now they need to be told that. And they need to be told that in real time. And then everything gets exacerbated by bad weather events. These big, Hurricane Sandy and stuff, you have a whole new set of issues there. You have foreign crews coming into your territory who do things differently. They use different wires, different tools, different techniques, and they come into your territory. Now they got to do everything to your spec.
And so a workflow process management system,
exactly.
Part of augmented reality can help there.
You
so
need to step them through that.
Yeah, exactly. So we just have about a minute left. In a word, for the utility sector, when do you think this is going to happen? When do you think augmented reality, firstly, is, are they trialing it today? And when do you think there's going to be a critical mass of deployments in a
Sure.
word.
I'm running a project where we have 9 utilities trying probably about 20 different use cases. Now, there's a lot of augmented reality vendors that are very aggressive trying to get into utilities. I see them doing the trials over the next year, 2 years, and then you'll start seeing them rolling them out based on the cost-benefit analysis that we're calculating for these pilot projects.
Great. And Paul, in the smart cities?
It's sort of depending on the use case, actually. You know, citizen engagement, you sort of have that today. I mean, there's applications out there that you can put on your smartphone, and you can look at your bus transit times and stuff like that. So once we start aligning it more with the IoT infrastructure, and what you really need there is more the IoT infrastructure. You know, a lot of smart cities are in the process of testing and deploying and trying to really understand what they really need, you know, whether it be, you know, atmospheric sort of monitoring to, you know, the computer vision stuff. So, but from that citizen engagement, it started, it's being done today. It's only gonna grow. And with that, what's gonna make that key is to understand really your end user, the consumer itself, the citizen, to know, you know, if I never take the bus and I walk by a bus stop, I know I don't wanna see that the bus is 5 minutes late, you know. It's gonna be that, again, that artificial intelligence of understanding your preferences, basically, and then providing you the information in that way. Public safety, with fixed type videos, we're actually looking to do trials here, you know, within a couple months to really prove that out. Again, that's gonna be related a little bit to IoT and how much things you can get censored up and be able to see within that. When you get into public safety with police officers, stuff like that, I think that's a much farther out. You need to have the devices that, the platform itself that can support, you know, the hands-free, be very lightweight, be very durable. And on top of it, you know, one of the things we don't talk much is about, will the end user actually use it? You know, and cops is, you know, police officers, you know, they're sort of stuck in their ways. They have ways of doing stuff. So are they actually gonna use the technology even though we can perfect it? The maintenance, it's been done in very small areas. We're doing it a little bit with our one fiber deployment, looking to really, as we lay new fiber within our, you know, cities, that we are, you know, really getting the GPS data correct. That's the biggest thing, and you'll find across the board inventory of where your assets are, and having that being correct is gonna be critical for any of these systems. So, as again, I look at it more from a data standpoint, that to make it useful, you know, you really need to make sure you have your data models. I know there was gentlemen talking about interoperability. That's a huge thing. That's one of the things we're looking at, is how do we ingest all this amount of data, and do we become like a data broker for all these sensors? So it is sort of a common data structure that we can build for all the data to be able to do this. So, but definitely, you know, within that, you know, I think in small deployments and very controlled environments, like inside environments, doing the maintenance is something that definitely can be done today. As we move to more of that really field worker, that's where it gets a lot more complicated.
So it sounds like, if I were to summarize, there's some, you know, real use cases that provide some benefit in both these verticals we discussed today. You know, those deployments, the trials are underway. The deployments are, you know, probably a year or two out. And in terms of the overall benefit, you know, I think for the industrial supply chain in general, the benefits aren't to increase top-line revenues, is to help OpEx, is to help decrease operational expenses through a series of, you know, enhancing productivity, increasing safety, reducing error rates in general, and really trying to provide the tools, the right tools to the right people at the right time. So I think if there's one thing to take away from this session, I would encourage you to think about that. So thank you very much.